Charting a new and sustainable economic model is at the top of discussions as the first African regional roundtable on climate initiatives kicked off in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia on Tuesday. The UN Under-Secretary General Vera Songwe is amongst the stakeholders taking part in the forum.
Africa COP is not just a COP where we go and meet and talk, but that it has to be a COP that delivers. We're looking at this COP being really the clarion call, the wake-up post-COVID recovery, where we're all going to be in a different economic setting.
Ministers discussed the African Trade Exchange Platform, highlighting the need for fertilizers across Africa, especially since the continent has been heavily impacted by COVID, the Ukraine conflict, and rising food prices.
We have gas. I just talked about the availability of gas in mostly, I think, maybe we would say our northwestern borders and a little bit of our eastern borders. Fertile land in our southern parts of the continent. We could begin to have that conversation of how do we, ensure that Egypt creates maybe 6 million jobs by buying wheat from southern Africa as opposed to bringing it in from outside the continent. We can also export, of course, but there is a conversation on the AFCFTA that begins to happen as we look at that.
Organizers of the three-day forum say their aim is to catalyze climate finance towards building climate resilience on the continent. The forum also comes ahead of Egypt's presidency of COP27.
Hello and welcome to this Africa News interview. Our guest today is the Prime Minister of Chad, Pahimi Padacké. He's joining us from N'Djamena. Prime Minister, thank you for being with us. Your country is facing several crises, security, economic and political. My first question is about the National Reconciliation Dialogue with the opposition and rebel groups, which is due to take place on the 20th of August. Do you think this will lead to a peace agreement?
The President of the Transitional Military Council and the Transitional Government, which I head, have voluntarily chosen to organize a national, inclusive and sovereign dialogue. We therefore believe that the date of 20th August 2022 will be met. And until then, we're counting on the will of every Chadian to move towards peace so that we can reach an agreement in Doha.
But all the people involved are not in favor of this dialogue. Do you think it could lead to a peace agreement?
What is important in our vision is the best interest of the Chadian people. It is the interest of peace. It is the interest of the stability of our country. We believe that by then the military groups will accelerate the pace so as to join the great mass of the Chadian people who will find themselves in this communion, this inclusive national dialogue of 20th August 2022.
When he came to power in April 2021, Mohamed Idris Deby promised elections within 18 months. You have just 3 months left before this deadline. Will it be respected?
We have chosen to hold a national political dialogue so that at the end of this transition, Chad will never again experience rebellion. This objective has contributed to delaying the holding of this dialogue because consensus is laborious. Inclusiveness is a huge task. We opened the Doha pre-dialogue on 13th March 2022, and 4 months later, the discussions continue. We had not foreseen this.
The deadline is October 2022, so what you're implying is that the elections won't take place on that date.
Since the dialogue is sovereign, it will have to decide.
Chad, like other countries, is facing an increase in prices, mostly because of the conflict in Ukraine. What measures has your government taken to deal with inflation?
The Chadian government has waived all taxes on basic necessities. We have also ordered about 60,000 tons of food from the public treasury. First, to distribute to the most vulnerable populations. And second, to subsidize another part of the population that has more resources. This is the short-term aspect. Now, on the structural aspect, it is not only COVID-19 or the war in Ukraine that has had an impact on the price hikes in Chad. We have a structural price hike linked to the fact that our agriculture is rain-fed and depends on climatic conditions.
Last question. With Mali's withdrawal from the G5 Sahel, does this not signal the death of this regional organization that was supposed to fight against jihadism?
Mali has experienced difficulties in its relations with the international community, starting with the West Africa region with ECOWAS. This led the Malian government to take a decision regarding the G5 Sahel. We're confident that Mali will return to the organization, taking into account the common objective that we have, which is to fight terrorism.
You hope that Mali will return to the organization, but what preparations have you made in case it doesn't?
We're not giving up. The armed forces of the G5 Sahel member countries continue to face this situation with courage and seriousness, hand in hand.
Prime Minister Albert Pahimi Padacké, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching this interview. You can watch it again on our website, africanews.com. See you soon.
A new and surprising cabinet unveiled in Somalia. The country has appointed the former deputy leader and spokesman for the Al-Shabaab Islamist group as religion minister, the Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre said Tuesday. The announcement marks a sharp reverse of fortune for Mokhtar Robo, who has spent the last 4 years under house arrest after a falling out with ex-president Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, better known as Farmajo. Finally, I call on the Somali people, wherever they are, to welcome and work with the new cabinet of the national interest to perform its hefty national duties. Tuesday's appointment include a deputy prime minister, 25 ministers, 24 state ministers and deputy ministers in a 75-member team, with the parliament due to vote on the nominees.
The South African police says they have arrested more than 40 men over suspected illegal mining in Krugersdorp outside Johannesburg, following reports of the gang rapes of 8 women and armed robbery of a video production crew. The suspects in the case are allegedly illegal miners.
This operation is one of those sustained operations we are running in the province to can deal with illegal mining and illicit businesses. So, but this is on another level. Usually you see us when we deal with this illegal mining, we do the disruptive operations. We do the disruptive operations whereby we also remove their tools of trade.
Authorities in Gauteng province say they have stepped up their operations against illegal miners in recent days, but none of those detained on Tuesday have been directly linked to the incident which outraged the Krugersdorp community, according to the police.
The process of taking the fingerprints, the DNA, the buccal sample, whatever, it's our investigation chain. We'll continue with that, because when we do that, it also assists us to can link these people with other crimes which they've committed before. So it will help us to can deal even with those who were evading us all along.
Spent firearm cartridges were also found near one mine dump after 3 suspects engaged in a shootout with police before being detained. The illegal miners, known as Zamazamas, dig for gold in the Johannesburg area's many closed mine shafts.
A Congolese military delegation was sent to Beni, northeastern DRC this Tuesday, 2 days after 3 people died and several were injured after UN peacekeepers opened fire on civilians in Kasindi at the border with Uganda. The government cannot abandon its people. That is why I'm here and visiting Nwunded while we are waiting for them to receive appropriate care in Beni or elsewhere, in accordance with the doctor's orders. Soon after the incident, the UN issued a statement reading its soldiers opened fire for unknown reasons and forced their way through. More than 30 people have died in protest in the last week in the North Kivu province. Participants are denouncing the failure of UN's mission to protect people from armed groups. I was near the avenue of the hotel when MONUSCO arrived and started shooting at people. They saw people and shot at everyone. I was shot while I was trying to hide to see what was going on. UN Secretary General said he was outraged by the shooting and called for an investigation on the Kasindi incident. President Félix Tshisekedi shared a crisis meeting as in addition to Kasindi, other deaths were reported in 4 other cities. The peacekeepers came from the east, and as they had just spent a night at the migration barrier, they had to cross the customs and excise barrier. After the opening of the barrier, they themselves had the courage to pass through and enter the city. And there they began to shoot directly at the population, who was angry at the fact that these peacekeepers had entered Kasindi. The situation is still very tense in the region. The Congolese government said it would convene a meeting with MONUSCO to re-evaluate their withdrawal.